Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So I woke up this morning and while having my morning cup of coffee, I saw that CNN has used the whole Charlottesville thing as a means of anti MRA propaganda. Yeah, I should have seen this one coming. Anyway, let's have a look at the clip.
Son's views in no way reflect those of the rest of the family. It's a powerful letter. Here's a portion of it that I'll read to you. You can see the whole thing online. On Friday night, my son, Peter Tefft, traveled to Charlottesville, Virginia, was interviewed by a national news outlet while marching with reported white nationalists who allegedly went on to kill a person. I, along with all of his siblings and his entire family, wish to loudly repudiate my son's vile, hateful, and racist rhetoric and actions. We do not know specifically where he learned these beliefs. He did not learn them at home. I've taught all my children that all men and women are created equal, that we must love each other all the same. Evidently, Peter has chosen to unlearn these lessons, much to my and his family's heartbreak and distress. Peter Tefft, my son, is not welcome at our family gatherings any longer. I pray my prodigal son will renounce his hateful beliefs and return home. Then, and only then, will I lay out the feast. Joining us now is Peter Tefft's nephew, Jacob Scott. Jacob, thank you for joining us. I know this is not a comfortable situation for you or the family. I want to play for you some of what your uncle had to say about the reaction to his involvement.
Fascism is just loving your family and doing what's best for your nation. I don't hold anything against them for what they had to say about me because it's the safest thing to do in this political climate. Nazi is a racial slur towards white people. I would say there's no objective way to measure any race above any other race or any person above any other person.
Jacob, how are we to understand what your uncle is talking about and what he's about as a person?
Well, you know, he says that he doesn't believe that there's any objective way to measure one race against another, but what he told me in private was that he believes that black people have inherently lower IQ than white people, that IQ is genetic, and that white people simply have higher IQ, and that makes them better. So if he says that he doesn't believe that white people are superior, he's just lying.
So where do you think this came from in him? I mean, we all read the letter from his father saying he didn't learn this in our house. What's your experience?
Geez, I wonder where this is going.
Well, you know, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how we think that he was radicalized online. You know, back in 2008, 2009, he was like pretty much anybody else in the family. He was a feminist. He was a progressive. He was a vegetarian.
A family of progressive feminist vegetarians. I'm sure that none of them will in any way misrepresent evidence or facts, because maybe not so much vegetarians, but progressive feminists, no, they never misrepresent the truth. It just never happens. It never happens.
But around the time of Ron Paul's presidential campaign back in 2012, he started spending a lot of time on these sort of fringe internet spaces like 4chan and getting all his news from like InfoWars and other places like that. And over time, he just started to move further and further right. And this happened completely behind our backs. The first we had any indication of this was maybe 2 years ago. I mean, we knew he was like a men's rights activist, but...
So they knew that he was a men's rights activist. My question would be, what exactly makes you think that this guy was an MRA, or is an MRA? Now, the description has a little bit more information than what we just got there, so let me quickly read that to you. Scott also noted that Tefft also held views from the men's rights movement, which is known for opposing feminism and believe that men biologically have more power and thus should be entitled to that power. Yeah, yeah, what do I say about that? Unbelievable, fucking unbelievable. He explained that Tefft quickly devolved into a man that cursed Jewish people and advocated fascism. Yeah, because that's also well-known MRA talking points, right? But let's continue.
Around 2 years ago, he showed up to a family gathering, and he started ranting about Jews. And I went aside with him, and I said, "Do you identify as a white nationalist?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm a fascist." And before I could say anything else, he goes, "The good kind of fascist, though, by which I mean an efficient one." And, you know, I feel that as a society, we need to be talking about this phenomenon of, like, young white asocial men who are going into these internet spaces and they're becoming radicalized, often without their family's knowledge, and it's becoming a real problem in our society. We see the explosion in popularity of these neo-fascist groups among these young white men, and it's tearing families apart. It's torn my family apart, and it bears, frankly, a scary resemblance to the recruiting tactics of terrorist groups like ISIL.
Okay, so what is all too common, unfortunately, is claims like this are just made and there is no evidence given whatsoever. And unfortunately, mud tends to stick. So what I did is I did an internet search to try to find whether this guy had any connection to the men's rights movement, because, you know, it's not an impossible claim, but most likely bullshit. Needless to say, I couldn't find any connection on the internet. So what I decided to do is to go to his Twitter page and look through all 817 people that he's following to see if there's any MRAs. Now, needless to say, folks, I should not have to be doing this in the early hours of the morning. I shouldn't have to be going through someone's Twitter feed to see if they're actually an MRA, because the person making the claim should be the one providing the evidence. But as is all too common, there is no evidence, just the claim. So now once again it's up to me to try to do the best I can to see if the claim has any validity to it whatsoever. Because if I'm going to say this guy isn't an MRA, I want to be pretty fucking sure that he's not. Now, the reason why I'm going through his Twitter feed is because if this guy has any connection to the men's rights movement, we would expect to find popular MRAs like Karen Strawn, Paul Elam, A Voice for Men, Honey Badgers, Dr. Randa McCam, myself, Cassie J. Now, I know Cassie J is not an MRA, but obviously she's connected to the men's rights movement, the Red Pill movie, things like that. If we don't find any of them whatsoever, then it's a little bit strange, right? It's strange that someone is an MRA but doesn't follow any of those people whatsoever. It would be fucking weird. Now, as we can see from this guy's feed, he does follow a lot of pro-white, white supremacists type groups, type pages. Sorry, folks, if this is a bit tedious, but like I said, I want to give the claim the best possible chance. I just saw PewDiePie there. PewDiePie, well-known MRA. So at this point, I haven't seen a single MRA, at least any MRAs which are well-known and influential, which you would expect. When I woke up this morning, I didn't expect to be doing this. Look, CNN. He actually follows CNN, which is ironic considering CNN is making the claim that he's an MRA, and he doesn't follow any MRAs. And still not... Oh, look, we actually have one MRA, Stefan Molyneux. Now, Steph is kind of out on the outskirts. He's more known as a libertarian than he is an MRA. Still, if this guy's an MRA, we would expect to see Karen, Paul, Honey Badgers, possibly myself. Nothing so far. We have one MRA who is better known as a libertarian. And still nothing. Sam Harris, who's not an MRA. Lauren Southern, who's not an MRA. President Obama, also not an MRA. And that's it. So I think it's pretty safe to say this guy is not a men's rights activist, nor has he ever likely been a men's rights activist. So why would his nephew claim that he is? Well, I'm guessing that maybe he's an anti-feminist. Although going through the people he follows, I didn't really see a lot of anti-feminism there either. So maybe he just said something which was anti-feminist one time or something, and that's enough apparently to be classed as an MRA. And this is the dangers of this type of groupthink, where anyone who doesn't agree with everything you say 100% is the enemy. It's an us or them type scenario. And we see it in both the far right and the far left. So if you're not on the far left, then you are a white supremacist / MRA / Trump supporter / anyone else who doesn't agree with exactly what you believe. It's really not that different than saying that anyone who isn't white is the problem, right? It's that in-group, out-group mentality. And it's fucking bullshit when people on the left or the right do it. I thought I'd do a quick search on the net to see if there's anyone else making the same claim that Charlottesville is somehow connected to the men's rights movement. And at this point, I didn't find a lot. I did find some articles making weak connections, but there hasn't been a lot making that claim yet. Of course, this could change dramatically overnight. So let's have a quick look at some of them. Identities of the Charlottesville white nationalist marchers revealed. This is quite funny. The marchers made Nazi salutes and waved their Confederate flags, with no white hoods hiding their faces. The sea of angry white men were fair game for the internet to look them up. Within hours, Twitter users, notably Yes, You're Racist, were posting close-up images of the tiki torch-wielding marchers. They requested that anyone who recognized the array of faces spread the word, find their addresses, schools or employers, and make the racists face the consequences of their actions. A process known as doxxing, which has more commonly been used by men's rights activists against feminists. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the only people who dox are MRAs doing it to feminists, right? Yeah. Let's have a look at another one. Why he went to Charlottesville, I had to know. I asked what his organisation hoped to accomplish at Charlottesville, and he said that they wanted to red pill more people for the movement. Red pill is a slang term in certain alt-right adjacent internet communities, like the men's rights crew. Yeah. First, troll and disarm fascists, then nuke their agenda from orbit. That sounds non-threatening. The so-called men's rights activists and red pillars make up a significant subgroup within the alt-right, but these events represent a shift from racial and ethnic identity issues to gender discrimination. The alt-right, radicalized white men OD'd on toxic testosterone and angry at everything. The GOP are now essentially the party of angry MRAs, extremist evangelicals and white supremacists, Nazis, because they allowed themselves to be made into that and have done absolutely nothing to fight against it. So once again, no evidence, just claims. Basically it goes, we don't like the stereotype of these people we created, so therefore we are going to do everything we can to demonize them without providing any evidence. And this is the type of shit we get over and over and over again in the so-called media, without the slightest bit of honesty, research, or truth. It's all just fucking propaganda.
A lot of experts see similarities, that you take people who are outcasts, who are downtrodden, who are disaffected, and they're looking for a rationale for their own lives, and hate very often can take root there. When the family realized that he was going this way, were there any attempts to try to talk some sense to him?
Yeah, I have had a few conversations with him since this kind of arose as an issue. I had a conversation with him just recently where he was talking about the supposed inherent IQ of the races. People say online, you can't reason with Nazis. And I went into my discussion with Peter, my most recent discussion a few months back, thinking, maybe I can at least get him to question his own beliefs. Maybe I can get him to consider the idea that he might be wrong about some of these things. And I really tried to pose these sort of alternative explanations for all of the social ills that he observes in the world. And ultimately, at the end of it, it just seemed like we were going in circles a lot. He's got like a million reasons for believing everything he believes, and he gets it all from all these different sources. As the guy in the video said, it's like a rabbit hole that they go down, and it just poisons their mind, and you can't get them back from it.
What do you make of what happened with the president yesterday, and him saying, there's problems on both sides of what he saw happening in Charlottesville?
I think it's disingenuous. I think it's frankly very upsetting because, only one side is advocating for racial separation and racial supremacy. I consider myself pretty far left. I consider myself a democratic socialist. And Peter has talked to me on a few occasions about how, oh, you guys and us, we should team up. We have the same goals. We're both fighting against the establishment. We're both fighting against the globalists. And, I say to him, Peter, you advocate for racial separation. I advocate for racial reparation. I believe in social justice and equality. There is no similarity between us. You can't compare the Nazis and the people who fight against the Nazis and say that there's some kind of moral equivalency there.
What do you think the president is doing with his statements? What do you think his motivation is?
I think his motivation is, frankly, to try not to drive off the people who have given him their most ardent and loyal support over the years, which are the white nationalists. I mean, when my Uncle Peter, when he showed up to that family gathering and when he was ranting about the Jews, he showed up wearing a Make America Great Again hat. He had two of them. So there's definitely a connection there.
Did he support Trump, or do you think he just saw this president as an opportunity to kind of advance his own agenda?
I think he initially definitely supported Trump. More recently, he's fallen back on sort of this idea that Trump was compromised by the deep state and no longer works for them. But he still regards Trump as this lesson that nationalism can. And he changed the conversation, and you know, things of that nature. But he's since the start of Trump's campaign, he's definitely been an admirer of Trump, I would say.
Do you know if your uncle has any regrets about how Heather Heyer was killed and all the violence that took place down there?
No, from what he said, it sounds like he blames the Charlottesville police. I'm not sure what his rationale is for that, but you know, he's planning. He said that he's planning some kind of event here in Fargo in October, where he's going to get a bunch of his Nazi friends together. And considering the national profile that he's accrued over the last few days, he very well could end up summoning quite a few Nazis to Fargo. And, you know, we have kind of a sizable progressive anti-fascist movement here in Fargo. And you know, we're going to go out and we're going to counter-protest him for sure. But, you know, who knows how many people he's going to bring. So if there are any people out there who are like, you know, DSA, Black Lives Matter, Women's March kind of people who want to come down and stand by us and march with us, we'd be, you know, more than grateful. We'd absolutely welcome that.
Well, just remember, everybody has a right to speak. You got a right to be there. And the point is to keep it nonviolent and to try to move this country forward. That's what everybody should try to be doing, to stand firm for what matters. Jacob, thank you very much for being with us. I'm sorry your family's going through this.